Alright, last tutorial about the to-do app. The thing we're going to do today is when we add tasks and things like that, we're going to make them persist in the browser using what's called local storage, so that you can access these tasks even when you navigate away from the web page and come back. They'll stick around. So right now, when we refresh the page, our tasks go away, but we're going to make them stick around or persist using local storage. So to do that, first thing we're going to do is create a handler in our app.js. Everything will be in app.js today. And we'll call it update storage. What we're going to do in this update storage function is take our entire state of the application, this .state, and we're going to store it in the browser in a file so that we can access it later. So we're going to do this: local storage dot set item, and we'll label it state since that's what we're storing. We're just storing the whole thing. And then local storage can only store strings. Strings are text with quotes around them. So in order to convert from our object to a string, we have to use a JSON method, JavaScript object notation, which we've gone over. JSON, and then .stringify, and then you can put in this .state. And that's going to store our entire state in a string in local storage, which we can access later by getting the state. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out by doing console.log local storage, just to double check that it works okay when we call this function. So for update storage, we're going to call it whenever we set the state. We're going to put it in as a callback. So the second parameter of this .set state, which is optional, is a callback function. When you're done setting the state, then do this function. That's what a callback function is. So we're going to do that everywhere we set the state. Feels like kind of a dirty way to do it, but it'll work just fine for what we're doing. So let's open this in a new tab and open up the console. So when we add a task, you can see that our storage object gets logged to the console, and there's our state in a string. Okay, so later when we refresh the page, we have to load what we have stored in storage. So this has to do with React lifecycle. React lifecycle, or application lifecycle in React, talks about when things happen in your application. So here's a little diagram to tell us. So the application mounts, meaning it's like loaded and added to the DOM, the document object model. And these methods are called in order. So we have the constructor called first, which is where we've set our state, and then we have render called. And then there's this function that we can override called component did mount. This is where you want to load data, whether it's from local storage or from a server or wherever. You want to do that in component did mount. The reason is it's good practice to render your HTML and CSS first and then load the data into it. That way the content paint happens and users know that your application really is being loaded, and then the data will come in as it does. Okay, so we're going to override this function, component did mount. I like to put it right above the render function in my applications just so I always know where it is. And then in here we're going to do this .set state. Now we have to get the local storage from local storage. So to do that, we're going to do this. const state equals local storage dot get item quotation mark state. Now, if that exists, so we'll say if that state exists, because the first time you load the application, there's not going to be anything stored in local storage, right? But if that state exists, then we want to go ahead and set our state. And then we'll say json.parse because it was stored in a string. So now we're converting it back to a JavaScript object. State. Okay, very cool. Last thing we need to do is in our update storage, we need to remove the old state and put in the new state every time we make a change. So we can do local storage dot remove item state. And that should do the trick. Okay, let's double check. When we run our application, oh look, our task from before was loaded. Hooray! Let's add another task and then refresh the page and see if those tasks persist. Sweet. So again, this is just stored in the client's browser. We don't have a server or anything that's storing these things, right? Let's go ahead and refresh this page and see if archive sticks around. Very good. So if you'd like to learn more about how local storage works, you can go to our Canvas, and there's some links in there about how to use local storage, what's the difference between local storage and cookies. Cookies are another way to store data on the browser. How does it work? And then this is also a little video, 2 minutes long, about the React lifecycle. Today we only used, well, we've used constructor and render before, but we only used component did mount today. If you want to update a component and do something while you're doing that, you do component did update. And if you want to run some code while your component is being destroyed or unmounted, i.e. you're going away from the website, then you can override component will unmount, just like we did component did mount in our class component. Okay, so I hope you learned a lot in this tutorial, and have a great day.